Good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. As already indicated, yes, I'm from Education International, which is the Global Federation of Teacher Unions. We represent 32.5 million educators in 178 countries from early childhood to tertiary education. I would like to thank the All Africa Students Union. As educators and students, we share a specific symbiotic relationship. That is the reason why we have been asking UNESCO to recognize and declare the student-teacher relationship as intangible cultural or world heritage. We hope to make progress and have that relationship recognized by the United Nations soon. Colleagues, as already pointed out by the other speakers, education is at the crossroads, mainly because of long-standing challenges which have been laid bare by the current COVID-19 crisis. Just to recall that even before the current crisis, Sustainable Development Goal for Quality Education and the objectives of the Continental Education Strategy for Africa were already off track. We launched a report at the United Nations High-Level Political Forum in July 2019, and in that report, the biggest bottleneck to achieving SDG goals by 2030 is lack of education financing and inadequate investment in teachers at all levels of education. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a serious impact on students, teachers, and education systems. EI Africa's most recent study on the impact of COVID-19 on education shows that distance education programs provided during COVID-19 have not been effective. Over 80% of the teacher union respondents from 34 African countries consider the e-learning measures taken by governments to be ineffective, mainly because of challenges related to digital infrastructure and connectivity. Teachers lack the necessary training and support for them to be able to deliver effective online teaching and learning. Furthermore, data costs are very high and unaffordable to many educators, students, and families. That is why Education International is calling on the African Union and African governments to regulate data costs. Unless data costs are regulated and digital infrastructure is made universal and accessible to all, distance education and e-learning will remain a pipe dream for the vast majority of our children and youth. COVID-19 has given rise to widening inequalities and exclusion. Rural children, girls, children with disabilities, refugees, and migrants are being left behind. Overall, children in developing countries and in Africa in particular are being left far behind because of the digital divide and long-standing problems bedeviling our country's education systems. EI is calling on governments to carry out equity audits. We need to know who is being left behind, and we should target those groups of children and youth and get them to school and to remain there. Colleagues, the right to equitable, inclusive, quality education for all can only be achieved through strong public education systems. Relying on private actors to deliver education is not a sustainable solution. For example, results from the EI Africa study I cited earlier on show that teachers in private schools have either gone for months without pay or have been laid off. Some education institutions have been forced to close, and governments have had to take on those students at all levels of education. Education, as we know, is a fundamental human right and a public good. Governments have an obligation to ensure that this right is enjoyed by all children, youth, and adults. That is why we need strong public education systems and well-funded public schools, colleges, and universities. African governments need to adhere to agreed international benchmarks for financing education by allocating at least 20% of their national budget or at least 6% of their country's GDP to education. This is a commitment they have already made, But the problem is, according to UNESCO's Global Education Monitoring Report, African governments are currently investing 16.8% of total public spending, not 20, and 4.4% of GDP, not 6. So we need to push through advocacy, mobilization, and action so that they invest more in education and allocate it equitably across the different levels. Increasing the overall size of the budget, as David Archer pointed out, is also fundamental. So we need to increase the tax to GDP ratio through progressive tax policies. We need to challenge tax avoidance, tax evasion, tax holidays, and corruption in our countries. In short, I would put it this way: the education cake is just too small. We need to grow the size of the cake so that the piece that we get as education is bigger and reasonable. Unfortunately, education budgets are under threat. We've just heard previously about the impact of international financial institutions, which continue to put caps on public spending. So we will continue to challenge that. Now, as teachers and as students, as teacher organizations and as student organizations, we need to join hands in defending and promoting quality public education for all. Protecting education budgets from cuts and calling for more investment in education should be our rallying cry moving forward. Students are not passive beneficiaries of education policies and programs, but change agents, the future of our communities, societies, and our very existence as humanity. As a key stakeholder, you should be consulted and be at the table when education policy decisions are made. Nothing for us without us. As we have been collaborating, as we have been collaborating very well with students, particularly at global level. We will, in that regard, be hosting the Global Students Forum, which is a new grouping of all student unions in the world in our headquarters in Brussels. I believe we can cultivate the same deeper partnership and collaboration in Africa, and I look forward to meeting with your leaders in pursuit of that goal. Thank you once again for inviting us to be part of this important online conference. I wish you great success. Thank you.